Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cosmere Connections. We're a collective of book-loving nerds rereading Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere series. From book 1 to book 16 million, we'll be uncovering every secret connection there is to find. Today, we are joined by Swiggity Swoo,
What's going on, everybody?
John,
I must find the secrets. All the secrets. What?
Did you say something, Reader? Because you cut out.
I said K.
Hello, I am here.
Yeah, we didn't
And
hear.
I'm
We did
ReaderWarrior.
not get the part where you said K, and it just seemed like a big awkward pause.
Hence the what?
Huh?
Why are you guys staring at me?
What word could he have said? And I'm Warrior, and today the last 5 chapters/days of the Emperor's Soul. So days 70, 76, 85, 97, 8. Kay, I believe you have day 70.
Yes, day 70. Woo! It's a pretty short chapter, all in all. So, Shy does some things, hangs out with Gautona, chapter ends. Over. Great. Okay.
All right.
Perhaps a
My turn.
little too summarized.
Okay. So Gautona is actually learning more about the symbols that Chai is carving into the stamps. He's been learning about what they mean, and he's able to pick them out now a little bit more. So Chai puts one of the last stamps that she tries it on Gautona, and it works. And this is the stamp that she's been trying to figure out how to get work since the very first day when she tried the stamps on him. It's the stamp for why did the emperor decide to become emperor, to put his name forward. And it had a lot to do with Gautona and Gautona encouraging him, and that the emperor eventually felt resentment towards Gautona for pushing him to make that choice. And Gautona is not happy about that. He's a little bit upset about it.
I would be too.
Is that in this chapter? That is in this chapter, isn't it?
Yep. I think so.
I want to make sure that I'm not getting the wrong thing. So also we find out, Gautona has been studying he's been learning more about stamps, specifically about Shy's stamps, because he's been studying the plates that she has that are connected to her soul stamps. Isn't that this chapter? Am I missing
I think you
out?
jumped to mine.
I think I did jump to yours. I'm so sorry. We're a little shambly today, and I'm very sorry about that.
No worries.
I'm jumping around trying to remember. But he definitely doesn't think that it's evil. And he thinks that it can be good in some ways. He's starting to think about the soul stamps as something that are good and not necessarily completely evil, which is a shift in his mindset, which is interesting. So, and that's kind of it for this chapter.
He makes a comment like, maybe it's not evil, but it is unholy. And I was like,
yeah.
What's the difference between unholy and evil?
Well, unholy is to be condemned by your religion. Evil is to be inherently bad, menacing, or intentionally detrimental to those around you.
See, I was thinking it as like
yeah.
holy is like good, unholy is kind of like middle, evil is bad.
I mean, that could be if you wanted to define it that way, but unholy
Yours
has
makes
to have a
sense.
belief system around it, right? You have to have like a religion for something to be unholy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
At least that's my 2 bits.
Anybody have anything else for this chapter?
Nah, it's pretty cut and dry.
It's just
Okay.
an interesting structure to this book. I like how we're kind of like in Shai's shoes a little bit. Like you never get to see Ashraban when he's alive. So like, every time something is revealed about him, even through like the other characters, you start to get to learn who the Emperor is too, kind of like she does.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to mention this chapter. This is something that was interesting in this chapter is that she mentions that like a clever forgery can be as good as the real thing. And that's what the Heritage faction believes as well, because they have all of these forgeries of different priceless relics and stuff throughout their palace that she points out is like you surround yourself with these imitations, but it's like it's still an imitation, even but you think of it, but it's just as good as if it was the real thing to you.
The Heritage Foundation is like, yeah, we like it as long as it's just saying, hey, this is the thing, where there's no proof that it's not. Whilst Shai is very much, hey, I made this. This is a copy of that thing. My signature is going to be right smack in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So the Heritage is like trying to hide it, whereas Shai is kind of proud of like the forgery itself.
Yeah. It would be if, like, they hung up, like, the Mona Lisa and had it replaced with, like, a copy and this tried to keep it hidden.
I mean, that's basically what happens with the painting in The Office, right?
Mm-hmm.
Except then we find out there's a little bit more to that story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we knew that the original one was burned. And I don't think we talked about, like, what that said about Shai. I was listening to the Cosmere Reads podcast, and they have like an actual artist now on theirs, and like they were horrified by that and questioning why she would do such a thing. And I don't think that ever once crossed our minds.
Well, it's also, I think, because we know why she burned it.
Mhm.
Because we've read this before. As opposed to reading it for the first time, I feel like you would be like, what the heck? Like, why would you do that? Especially if you are an artist, like Shy, like that.
And it's like burning the Mona Lisa. Like you better have a pretty good reason, and she does.
Mm-hmm.
Would y'all care
Personally,
to hear
I never
it?
thought the Mona Lisa was all that great a piece of art.
I'm willing to argue in agreement. It's the historical aspect. It's the impact of here's the Mona Lisa.
I mean, sure.
Like the famousness of it, the prestige. It's something everybody knows. That's why I'm drawing upon it.
Yeah, and I understand why you're using it in your analogy. I'm just, I don't know, putting in my unnecessary 2 cents worth of opinion.
How did it get so
you come up with a
Because it's a Da Vinci, and Da Vinci is a big figure in history.
But I kind of
basically.
agree. It's like it's a beautiful painting. Like I could never paint it, but it's kind of mid. Like as far as what's out there.
it is just a woman.
It might. I mean, I'm not an art history person at all. I'm like totally not that person, but it might also have something to do with its like contemporary age, and the style of it in that period might have been revolutionary. Like, compared to what we can do now with oils or, whatever, it might not be that amazing, but for the period, it probably was something entirely new
A technical
or next
achievement.
level. Yeah, maybe. I'm just spitballing here.
What does
Okay,
ChatGPT
so
say,
back
Reader?
to the.
No, let's get back to the. Well,
Mhm,
let's focus
mhm.
back in on this book and less on the Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Day 76. Shy could escape right now today as the blood sealer takes her blood again. She had figured out he comes in early / on time the days the mail arrived. She has a false letter hidden in her sleeve, and all she needs to do is drop it outside the door as he leaves. But she hesitates, tempted by the fact that the Emperor's soul wasn't finished. The strikers outside had grown fond of Shy and hateful of the unnatural one. More and more, Shy walks. That's works. Shy works on the impossible task, and more Shy wants to succeed. Frava keeps coming in, taking her with their forger, and Shy knows that they were as good as her, they could do it themselves at this point. Frustrated, Shy decides to reforge the wall, right as Gaotona enters, and they watch as it becomes covered in a beautiful painting. It had taken 3 stamps, the first 2 instructions and revisions of the wall's history. I like that note, and how it's not just one thing can rearrange. It takes, I love that aspect of the magic. Atsuko of Jindo could have been kept here, and he could have painted during his visit. It was a fairly difficult to believe change, but the wall itself would rather be beautiful than boring. It had taken a stamp, and she wanted it to be her last change to the room. Gaetana looks around and marvels about how much she has changed her prison into a home. With the exception of the door, everything was different. It was perhaps the nicest room in the entire palace. He asks why she would waste her artistic gifts on forgery, when he knows that she could have painted the wall herself. Maybe she could have made stamps to help people see or feel what it's like to be her. He pulls out the box of essence mark, but the 5 stamps that could change her word inside. These were the things that they had promised to pay her with upon completion. The first would have made her a warrior, the second a survivalist, the third a scholar, the fourth an underworlder, and the last, the one she was most and scared of, would make her normal, a nobody with a completely different past. Even her aunt and uncle, who she keeps referring to in her head, are fake. In order for them to, and she keeps referring to them to keep stamp holds. Each of the stamps govern, I don't know what that word is. Oh, gave. Each of the stamps gave her unique skills and abilities. This one would remove them. Well, it's Gave, and then I scribbled something out. So,
Perhaps
Shy then explain.
Perhaps the subtle art of penmanship would be worth having a lesson in.
No. Computer science.
Digital note taking, then.
Yeah.
Type. Shy then explains that Shuzan, the original artist of the Moonlit Scepter, hired her to destroy the painting. It was meant to be for the woman he loved.
Not the Moonlit Scepter. It's the painting.
The other one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. I've even wrote painting. It was meant to be for the woman he loved, but is now used to glorify an emperor that he hates. He taught her how to paint like him so she could destroy it. 6 stamps later, and Shy is done. All that is left is to carve several hundred marks into one stamp. Puzzle, it was now time to put it together. It would take her at least 5 months, but instead she had 24 days to finish, and 24 days to run away.
So, minor correction here. She's not putting the hundreds of marks into a single stamp. She's putting them onto a single plate with which she will bind them together with another stamp.
Yeah.
It's a minor thing, but it's, it's a relevant detail. That's all.
Yeah, and Gaotona was studying the plates that she has for her soul stamp. Similar to like the wall where there had to be instructions other places and then there was one stamp that connected it all together. That's the same way the soul stamps work, where there are instructions given on the plate and then the stamp that you actually stamp into your skin is just the connection.
I love the implication that like nothing just wants to be everything wants to be better. Just for personal reasons, you might not be trying to get better. But magical haha means automatic be better. I mean,
Yeah.
this chapter implies like the kind of forger psychologist by just stamping and you can feel what that person is, or stamping fitness people.
But
This
you still
magic
have to
system.
have, the thing with forgery is that you do still have to have some type of connection to that person in some sense in order for the stamp to take at all.
Mhm.
Like we've seen that like some of the stamps that like Shy tried on Gautona didn't work at all whatsoever.
Mhm.
So any stamp that you use has to have some level of connection to whoever is getting stamped.
I thought the most like
And she destroyed the
interesting part of
painting.
this chapter was the soul stamps explanation, because she has her own personal like soul stamps, right? So she could turn into a ninja or like a survivalist or a somebody with underground experience was one of them. But like the most interesting polarizing one is kind of where she just forgets everything she's ever learned about soul stamping, and basically all she remembers is growing up on a farm. Like you had mentioned a minute ago about how like everything wants to be better, everything's like trying to get better. I was thinking about that a lot, of like, she basically just has her own like blue pill, like if in the Matrix, where she can just choose like to forget all this stuff and just go live a normal life. That's kind of crazy. It's like cheating the system in a way.
It's her out if she
Mhm.
ever decides she doesn't want to be a forger anymore for whatever reason. She wants to leave that life behind. She can use that stamp as her out.
Is that like
And
Brandon's like if he was just to give up writing or something, it would be kind of like that.
I mean, not so. Here's my little thing with this this last soul stamp. It it erases her memory, but not the reality of what she's done. Right. So if somebody all of a sudden discovered that she had made this big forgery and goes to come and get her after she's done that, like taken her out, they're gonna come and show up for her, and she's gonna be like, "I have no idea what's happening. Oh my god!" And to her, like that's just gonna be like the most traumatizing way to be executed or whatever, like.
It would be
The
kind
other
of cool
ones like could
if like
visibly.
if that happened and she's like had to recover her memories bit by bit and remember how to soul stamp. Like that would be a really good story.
That would be a good story. But like I'm also the other ones do say like they change her physically in some way. So I'm imagining like there is some sort of not just me as normal, it's me with like different features and hair color and other things. So
Well,
it does look
it
a little bit
makes
different.
her into a farmer, I think, right? Like so she'd probably be a little stronger, a little leaner, whatever. Um and I suppose too, after she'd been taken and she couldn't stamp herself every day, she'd probably eventually revert to her real self, but
Mm-hmm.
still, for in that
Mhm.
moment, can you imagine the trauma that would induce?
But then how
Yeah.
cool it
I
would
mean it's
be,
like Kingsman 2.
like
Sorry.
the next day when she, oh my god, I need my medicine, I need my medicine, because that's what it was written to say, is like she would have an instinctual like fear that if she didn't stamp herself she was going to die. And then she like
Mhm.
instead of dying she starts getting like all these memories back, like oh my god.
That'd be such a
Wait a
cool
minute.
story.
I'm not going to die. I'm going to turn into a wizard.
Fair to move on.
I believe you're going to be doing both 85 and 97.
I am, and I'm gonna just do them both together because they're short. Shorty McShort short. So day 85, Shy is frantically scrambling to make the final changes to the steel for Asher, or to the seal. Sorry, not steel. For Ashervan's love life. My problem is I can't read.
Yeah, I don't want to hear it. At least my channel is like messy.
She's sorry. So struggling to make final changes to the seal for Ashervan's love life. She struggles with it. It is the most private part of his personality. She keeps 2 books of notes now, one her real notes and the other notes that she shares with Frava. Her real notes also include ciphered instructions for her escape, which she tells herself 1 more week to work, and then she will run. When day 97 rolls around, one of her guards finds a note that she slipped onto the ground specifically for him to find. It is forged to look like a letter to the blood sealer they call Weed Fingers. It implies he is saving up wealth and collecting bits of the guards' bodies like nails and hair. The guards fall for it and are unnerved, despite Shy playing it cool and explaining how these things won't let him do much, really. And she even gives the example of how, like, he has to take her blood fresh every day. And she almost feels sorry for Weed Fingers, since the strikers are likely to rough him up a bit because of this. In the meantime, Shy knuckles down because tonight she will finish her great work.
Exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Woo!
The all-nighter
Quite
of
the
a
wind-up.
I got
lifetime.
a few notes.
Yeah.
I love how 85 starts and she's just like, no, it can't be. There's so many things I have to change now. And I'm like, gosh, to be in that last minute reflection panic and like think, oh, I can redo everything. I need to redo everything. It's no longer good enough. Because now you can see the whole project laid out. Gosh, I know that feeling.
You know what? We're gonna scrap it. We're gonna start over.
Start over. Let's go. To rewrite a code for the millionth time.
Guess I don't have a lot to say about these 2 chapters.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about them because they don't say a whole lot, really. Just that it's crunch
Well,
time. Captain
I
Crunch
like that
time.
she has to like that she makes a focus to like include passion. Otherwise, she is just making that robot Frava wanted.
But
Well,
she
kind of.
wants to, yeah, instead of making a robot, like, she wants to make a real person. Like, that's what she
Exactly.
wants to do.
Exactly, and I like that. I hate the fact that escape the palace and escape the city are 2 different tasks on her to-do list. For some reason, that just bugs me.
Why
Why?
should it?
Because
She
it's
could
like
just as easily
just right,
escape the palace
escape.
and then lay low in the city.
Like, escape the palace. Why are you staying there? Leave. You escape the
Because-
palace, leave, and you're home free.
But you also
necessarily.
not necessarily, because she knows that once she escapes the palace, like, there will be guards after her, trying to track her down in the city. So then she has to escape the city because they're probably going to try to lock the city down so that she doesn't leave.
Yeah,
but once
she
she's
could
out of the thing, she's
1000%.
good.
She could 1000% stamp herself with her like underworld persona every day for a couple of months until the heat dies down, and she could just hide out in the underworld of whatever the capital city.
Why do you
of the
guys
Rose
have to
Empire is.
rationalize my brief annoyance?
Because you were wrong, sir, and you should feel bad about it.
No, because you are incorrect.
City Escape is a great song, and I will not have it trashed on this podcast.
And then my next one was I love the fact that they've grown so accustomed to Shy that just like her being a forger doesn't even connect in their mind, but the blood sealer comes is still like a horrifying concept that they've internalized it as like a bad thing.
Because she's just a quirky little scholar tinkering in her room. Like, she's harmless. Like, she's harmless.
Meanwhile, this weird necromancer comes, cuts her open every day, dips his little bone stamp in her blood and presses it on the door, and then leaves in a huff.
Yeah.
That's my
Like,
job.
he's creepy.
Literally,
just
though, like, that's his job, is to come do that. Of course they don't
Yeah.
trust him.
And he doesn't communicate with them. He doesn't, like, interact in any meaningful way. He's just kind of there, and he does creepy stuff that nobody understands. What's to like associate with there?
Mm-hmm. As opposed to Shy, who's, she talks to them, she's learning about them, she probably asks about their lives, like, and is getting to know them. Like, she knows a lot about the guards and stuff.
You might say she's become invested in their lives. See what I did there?
She's made connections.
No. She's forged connections?
Heyo.
Yeah.
Ew. Okay, let's stop with the bad puns, and why don't we move on to the last chapter?
Okay, that one was mine.
Swiggity, the floor is yours.
Day 98. Shy finishes her essence mark, and in the morning time, she's chit-chatting with the guards, getting ready, kind of almost regretting that she has to escape, but really just mostly wanted to go back to bed. When Zoo comes in and tells the other guards to leave and that he'll watch over her all alone. But really what he wants to do is go in there and kill her like he promised he would. And Shy is freaking out. She's trying to bargain a little bit. But as he lunges for her, he falls over her bed and kind of through the floor. And it is revealed that Shy forged the floor under there, like basically saying that a long time ago there was weakness there. I can't remember if it was like the mold or
it was water damage.
Water damage.
Right. So the water damage and like a couple seals later, she's basically got this nice little trap that Zoo falls right into. This is also the morning that the blood sealer doesn't show up because he's been roughed up, as we were talking about. And so his mark isn't refreshed, and she escapes her cell. She slowly, carefully walks to the Emperor's chambers, pretending, everything's cool. And when she finally gets there, she's asking like, oh, I should have just left. I should have left the stamp there. All I'm doing is just spending more time in the palace. But she realizes like she can't leave without. Like it's like she says, like if a master sword maker made a sword, they couldn't just not take a couple swings with it. So
she has to know if it works.
Yes, just to see with her own eyes.
Can't blame her.
Do you trust these people not to like mess with the soul stamp? Like if she just left it, they would like analyze it, try to change it into what maybe Frava was leaning towards. So not only does like this, but Shy also gets to like see her masterpiece.
That's a good point. Who knows if they tried to edit the code, they might end up breaking it anyways, right?
Maybe.
But that's kind of a tangent. She creeps into the chamber. She stamps the Emperor, and it works. He comes back to life, or his mind returns, I should say.
Yes.
They have a pretty interesting discussion where she kind of talks about. Well, she kind of lies and says she's like a surgeon, basically. And yeah, it's a complete success. So she leaves. On the way out, she nearly collides with somebody wearing red armor, which
I have that note as well.
familiar with our Elantris stuff. That's pretty familiar imagery.
She also commented like all of the guards who were watching her would be sent to like the TO'd peninsula.
What?
Yeah, I remember seeing that because
Yeah, there's a comment about that.
Mhm.
I don't remember either of those being mentioned. Sorry.
no
You're good.
worries.
Sorry, I need to
Go
take
ahead.
a moment. I need to take a moment to enjoy the fact I knew something Kay didn't. This never happens.
The guards didn't even know what she was working on, like the ones that she'd been talking to. And she's saying like after this they're probably going to get sent to some remote place where they can't talk about what they've seen, like guarding the passage to the TO'd peninsula.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Oh no. I did just find where it says the red priest armor. I had totally missed that.
It's like one of the few clues that we get. This takes place on Cell.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
So we think it might be like a Gyorn or something.
Oh, he's a Gyorn.
Yeah, probably. Because he's wearing the red armor. Because he's wearing red armor, so he's got to be a Gyorn.
Which
Or
could be
Gyorn,
bad
Gyorn.
news for the Rose Empire. So the Bloodsealer Weed Fingers there, she begins to track Shy because Zoo actually cut her, giving him some blood to work with, which is not good. But she actually ends up running into Gautona, and Shy tells Gautona that the mark worked, and they have kind of a heart-to-heart where Gautona gives Shy back her essence marks. But he also kind of realizes that, like, he was kind of played a little bit. And it goes back to this idea that Shy had been talking about earlier of, like, the only way to manipulate a genuine person like Gautona was to also be genuine. And she gives Gautona one of her books, which I forgot to mention. She brought like 2 copies of her notebooks, the official one and like her personal one.
No, she burned her personal one before she left the room. She threw it in the fire, the one that had her actual notes in it.
Oh, wow.
No,
But
it's the other way around. She burned the fake one, and she brought the real one with her. She wanted them to think that she had burned her notes while she gave Gaetona the real one.
Oh, no, I can't remember.
Okay.
2 for 2, baby. Let's go.
Let me.
The
It's okay.
jury's
Keep
still
going.
out on
Go
this
ahead.
one.
I'll look it up. I'm gonna look at it.
So, yeah, she gives her whatever the book that she didn't burn was. and talks about how, like, in her essence mark, the blue pill one, she is going to write in there now a somewhat fake but somewhat inspired by Gautona, like, grandparent,
Aww.
which is really sweet. And then it's time to do battle. Basically, as the guards start to track her down, and as the blood sealers, skeletal creatures, come to life to track her down, she decides she's going to need to use her essence mark, and she stamps herself to become Shizan, which is basically a version of Shy if she went to karate class. She studied with, like, one of the monasteries, right?
Some monks, I thought.
Yeah, with some monks
Not
some group of monks.
Yeah, okay. Not as fleshed out as,
will-
like, as I would like, but
Wasn't it the Jindo arts, the Jindo martial
Mm,
arts?
No,
The
it's different.
Tiulu
Yeah.
people.
oh, the
Okay.
They're
Tiulu.
wary and dislike outsiders. They're warrior people. That's about all. It's the list.
Effectively, that's what it is, though. If they're warrior-like people, this Mark rewrites her history so that like she spent time with them, and from that, it also kind of worked into her physicality, like some muscles, if I'm not mistaken. Like it actually changed her
Mhm.
build and her like body language and everything. So she quickly kicks this guy's monster's asses, and she tells the Bloodsealer basically like, "Go home. You got a good thing going with this lady writing you letters," which I think is funny.
Jeez.
And then she takes
Which I
some
think
of his
it's
blood.
something that I think is interesting about that is that she says that she does it because she knew that Shy would want her to do that.
Yeah, I remember that. It was kind of like the little part of her was still in there.
Mm-hmm.
It reminded me of Shallan a little bit.
Well, it's like this is a stamp that can be used. Like I'm guessing it has like a timer because the history doesn't exactly work. Why would they have imprisoned a fighter and kept her around for 100 days? So like on some level, she knows that the stamp isn't going to hold, especially in this instant. So it's like I imagine it's sort of like somebody all the way in the back seat. That's the normal person, but now you're given the driver's seat to this new personality. You can still yell up from the back, but it's not them right.
Yeah, so similar to Shallan.
It did sound very Shallan-esque. So yeah, she's pretty much free to go after that, from what we know. And then there's a scene where Gautona ends up talking to Ashravan, and Ashravan is kind of like, you know, piecing together what actually happened. He starts to realize, like, oh, something with my mind, wasn't it? I was out for so long, and you basically needed like all these healers and everything, and nobody was supposed to know. Like, he actually figures it out.
Clever boy.
Smart man.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I had.
And
It was kind of a long chapter, but
It is a really long day compared to the rest.
right.
Yeah.
well, a lot happened.
Yeah. Let's see. I think I'll save that for the spoiler thing. I like that all the improvements she made to her room could have just been. Not only was she just like doing it to relax, but it was all a distraction for the bed. Now she made it the hole in the bottom and the bed flimsy. Just everything looks so nice and posh, and then suddenly the bed's super brittle, and there's a hole in the floor.
I never
Mhm.
thought about that. All those were like a distraction, because I kind of just thought she was like doing it to relieve stress.
Well, I think it was a
She's probably doing that
combination.
too.
Yeah.
But it does
Like,
work
you
really
can
well.
do like negative work and have that. Like she could have been using that as stress. Oh, I'm gonna make this one weaker. And the relaxation of the soul stamp and making it work. So that positive or negatively. Oh no, we want to talk about endorphins
Mhm.
and soul stamps.
I do find it interesting. I do want to say that she was able to change the dimensions of her room without affecting the blood stamp, which I don't think we talked about.
Well,
Because she basically knocks down the wall between this room and the next room.
no. No,
But-
right?
we talked about that. She does not knock
Not
down the wall.
literally.
She
No.
moves.
Not literally.
She makes it so that the wall was built in a different place,
Yeah,
which
but
is
I'm
how
saying
she's
knock
able
down
to do
is
that.
like
That's how she's able to do that. She's not stamping the entire room, all of the walls with that stamp. She's stamping one wall to make the room bigger.
mhm.
guessing when she did that, maybe that wall moved to where the door of that side room was. Because why would you have two doors into this one room?
They didn't. It was the
Well,
wall
so-
separating her room from the storeroom next door.
she didn't.
By-
I know, but now
she
that is
made so Peter, I think you're confused. So I think I just want to explain. So she didn't make it so that her room and the other room were combined. She still had the other room was still there, but it was smaller.
okay. Well, then she just pushed the wall back a feet.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting that she was able to do that without like the blood stamp having any like negative effect because it's on the room as a whole. Because I guess it's only on her
You know, like-
leaving the room, and that is technically, I guess, her not leaving the room, even though the room dimensions have changed from what they were originally.
Right. Like,
Which
Well, then that begs the question: if she made a new door and went through that, would that have set off the blood seal alarm?
Because she would have
Well,
left
that's-
the room.
so maybe we don't know. It depends on that blood seal. We don't really know to. Can we say we've officially moved into the spoiler section here because now we're getting into like
We can
all
come
kinds
back
of-
and argue
yeah.
the semantic. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Shy gets past the guards because she helped create the security checkpoints and stuff.
Back at the
And
very
Shy has a
beginning.
concept.
Back at the very
Yes.
beginning, she was helping Gautona.
not enough books
And
are
then
like prison
Shy-
escapes. I love this. I love this trope. It's
Yes.
it's one of my favorites. The fact that like I didn't even think of this, but like disguising the room with all the upgrades and like, oh yeah, she did think of like the precautions. Like that's so good.
I mean, it's putting up the poster from the movie over the hole in the wall.
It does kind of
Cockpit?
remind me of it reminds me
kind
of
of
one
exactly.
thing, which is like I don't remember at what panel or whatever, but I remember when we were at Dragonsteel, I think they were recording Intentionally Blank, and Brandon Sanderson was talking about how like, you know, you can kind of do anything once you get to the climax, as long as like I don't know if you guys have ever seen Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Oh yes.
Be excellent to one another.
Right, so like
And party on, dudes.
for our audience who may or may not have seen it, it's a time travel movie, and towards the end of the movie, spoilers for Bill and Ted, they realize that they can pretty much do anything as long as they remember to go back in time later and set it up. And like that's kind of how foreshadowing works, is like you could be like, oh, well, I could just write in a little scene where she cleverly hides a knife right here, and then bam, like later on, like, oh, there's the knife. Like,
Mhm.
Oh, I can set it up so she's the one who told Gautona that he should only let people in if they have his card. With
exactly.
his seal.
Oh, what's this? This is a card that I'm just gonna put in my pocket.
Yeah.
And my last really note of this day in this chapter set is that Shy has a concept of timelines.
What do you remember?
What do you mean?
Yeah.
When she
mean?
puts the Shizan stamp on her, there's a deliberate line of she could feel the timelines converging. And
Well, yeah.
that line just
Yeah.
messes with me in the
Has to.
Cosmere
Her whole-
sense.
Her whole job is to change history, right? So like she's got to make up a new timeline and make
I know, but
them
like it's the
together.
concept. It's not her history got rewrote or life. It's timelines converged. that's the part that's like, huh.
You just are talking about the wording
Like the
of it.
yes, I'm more so talking about the wording, but also there's the argument to be made, like, what if in Cosmere Timeline 2, it was Shizan, and they were keeping her for, maybe being the assassin. Very briefly, she blipped over, and then,
See, I think
Sorry.
just as I was talking about like him talking about his writing, he in another episode of Intentionally Blank, I think Brandon said like there's not going to be time travel in the Cosmere. Like it gets too weird and it doesn't quite work out. You know what I mean?
Plus, nobody can do it right
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
ouch.
There are too
Okay.
many issues with traveling backwards in time, but we're not going to get into that right now. So we'll keep going.
Okay, did you find out which book it was?
Huh?
Which
Oh,
book was
yeah.
burned?
Yeah, so it said the wording of it was what threw me off because it said the official one and the true one, which I think was what threw me off, and she said it was the official one she burned.
So they would
Which
all think that she destroyed it.
which I think at least in my head I was saying that like I don't know why, but like I heard official one and I thought that like that was like her like actual one that she had burned, I think.
Gotcha.
So,
The official one was the one where she tried to make it seem like it was way harder than it was, right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else for this chapter set? We have the epilogue, final thoughts, and that'll be it for our first ever interlude.
I think it's about time to yell at each other in the spoiler section.
Yep.
Oh, yes, it is.
Swiggity's like, I got hams to throw.
Okay, well, like I said, next time we're going to be finishing off The Emperor's Soul, but right now it's time to head into the spoiler realm. So if you have not finished this book, the entire series, what entire series? This is a simple novella, or potentially the entire Cosmere, then we recommend that you stop here because it is likely we will talk about everything and anything. If you are up to date, feel free to stick around because it is likely that we'll bring up details you may have missed or plot threads still yet to come. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, star, heart, or whatever it is on this podcast. Don't be afraid to comment your own thoughts and predictions. You can find us at conspod@gmail.com, at Twitter, and we even have our own Facebook group. We would love to hear from you. But if this is where we must part, then my name is ReaderWarrior, and I have been joined by Swiggity Swoo.
Whoa!
Very close up John.
Goodbye, friends.
Last but not least Kay.
Have a good one.
And don't forget, there's always another connection. Bye. And we're back. Spoilers. Day 70. So, there was a comment Gaetano made about stamping over and over and if that would leave a scar. It's like, no, the stamp just fades. But wouldn't the soul or the spirit web have itself a scar
So
over time?
I think
If
it's
Go
the
ahead.
same, I would say if it's the same stamp over and over and over again, it could leave a impression. Like we've talked about that previously, but I don't think individual stamps leave a scar because of the fact that the soul is always changing.
that, and like part of the way or part of the reason that Shy says after a certain amount of time he may not need the stamp anymore, right? That's his spirit web accepting those changes as reality because they've become so ingrained into his actual spirit, right? That's the scarring that Gautona is worried about. And it's a legitimate concern if you were doing the same thing over and over again. But changing a little thing every now and again, that's like getting a hangnail. Like, you're not, you know, you're not wounding yourself enough to make a permanent, lasting scar, pretty much.
Mhm.
I wonder if
And-
to like Astrovan's specific case, if it's more likely to happen to him, because it's kind of like a blank plate. It's like a blank page that you're writing on, whereas like Gautona is this fully formed, functioning, conscious person.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That it might be more likely for Ashravan to have it happen to him where he doesn't need the stamp as much anymore. Because his soul has accepted, his spirit web has accepted those changes.
I will agree, but for different reasons.
I could argue.
Wait,
Sorry.
I want to hear John's reasons. Sorry.
So, in this case, Gautona is being stamped with Ashravan's history.
Mhm.
No matter how many times you do that, you are not Ashravan, right? You are Gautona. So I think it would be considerably less likely for that to scar his spirit web in that way. Whereas stamping Ashravan with Ashravan's history, that's a much easier change to accept. And so I think it's far more likely that he will be scarred for that reason.
It'd be so funny if in the epilogue they're like, "We're ready for you, Emperor," and both of them just like coming. Okay. Anything else for 70?
I don't take notes on other people's chapters, so unless it comes up, like...
Okay, 76. Okay, well, I'm not even doing my listing of what happened in the chapters anymore. I'm so off my game today. I'm so sorry. 76. So this is the one where Shy could escape, but she wants to finish the project. She makes the painting in the wall, because all objects apparently want to be better. Even
Yeah.
anything with a soul
You-
wants
Unless
to be
you're a
better.
stick.
You want to be the best version of yourself.
And I
Like,
love that. Sorry.
I was gonna say, if Shalon was trying to change the stick into like
A better stick.
a better stick, I think she would have been able to do that. I think because she was trying to change it into something that it wasn't, it was more difficult for her to do. That's my thought.
Well, she can make, like, stamp it into, like, a tree. That might have been easier than turning the stick into fire.
Huh.
Like
Maybe.
soul stamping, it would be easier to make it into a fire, but soul casting,
Mhm.
making it into a tree would have been easier.
Imagine
To go into that, I don't know
a moment, if you will. Shy makes it to Roshar and meets Shalon.
Oh gosh.
Would Shalon become instantly like the greatest forger ever?
So the thing about it is that Shalon is not from my pawn.
So, okay.
So she would not be able to use forging.
Do we know that?
I'm not too certain.
Do we
about
know
that.
you have
Yeah,
to
I
be
disagree with
invested
that.
to do forgery? We know that my pawn is part of all soul stamps. It's part of that base
And that the
mark.
the ink is what accesses the magic.
Right.
It's not the person.
The investiture is in the ink. So
So
can
maybe.
anyone learn to be a forger?
Yes.
Essentially. So if that's the case, then all we have to do is figure out how to make forgery work on wherever Shalon happens to be at that particular moment. Which we know we can do because we have this fancy moon scepter that translates all the aeons and stuff. So, and we see Shai actually stamp herself on Roshar, or at least the cognitive realm of Roshar, or Scadrial. I
But
mean.
we also don't know if she changed the inside stamp mark or whatever it was called.
So
The thing that
Right,
has
that's
the
what I'm
map
saying.
of.
Okay.
Conceptually, we have grounds to suspect that we can do this.
Okay, so
Setting
here's
mark. Setting mark.
here's what the Coppermind says. Is that one generally has to be born in my pawn to be able to access to be able to do forgery. But ancestry there is not required. Though
This is location and
it's
nationality based.
yeah, but it is possible for you to be a to be a descendant of to have my pawn ancestry and be able to access forgery even if you weren't born in my pawn.
So we know that like a person needs to go through the Reread and then become an Elantrian in order to gain access to Aeon.
Mm-hmm.
Do we think there is a similar thing for soul stamps, blood sealers, where they have to go through some sort of formation or
So it does look like that it does say that not everyone who meets the geographical requirements like of being born in my pawn or descendant from someone who is my pawn to be able to access the magic system. So not everyone is able to use forgery, even in the my pawn people.
Yeah,
So
but we have other examples of people using a magic system that they are using magic from a location-based system that have nothing to do with said location. So
Mm-hmm.
I really think that there's gonna be ways around that. If Saphandrius can do it, so can you.
Yeah, I was gonna say
I don't think no.
There are probably ways around it.
Yeah.
Similar to like how Hoyd was able to become an Elantrian.
Right.
But
like him
it would
becoming an
be
Elantrian was based upon the deal he made with
yeah, I think it
the
would
sorceress.
be like something possibly similar, like a yeah. So like some kind of deal or something.
Deep Realmatics.
So we're assuming that blood sealers, forgers, and every other
well, and that's
system
the
on
other thing.
cell has some sort of transformation at some point in their life to turn them from a normal person into a magic user.
No, they just had to learn it. That's my stance, and I'm sticking to it.
That's
and
not what the Coppermind says.
I don't care what the Coppermind says.
See, I was kind of with John, and like I thought
Weedfingers-
this was like a backdoor access code to the Cosmere, but
is Weedfingers from my pawn?
No, blood
No.
sealing is different. It's similar, but it's different.
Mm-hmm. And actually, one of the questions I had, but it was on the last day, was would Shai be able to create a blood seal. But I
She
guess if we're saying that the
clearly
magic
has the
systems
know-how. So
has
I
the knowledge
guess
of what goes into blood sealing, but if we're saying that the magic systems require joining that group, like in the same way Hoyt has to become an Elantrian to use Aeons, then no.
right. Well, yes, because we know that we know from the Lost Metal, right? Lost Metal, the last Mistborn book, that
Lost. Yes.
yeah, she can stamp herself to gain access to other forms of magic. So she could just stamp herself to become a blood sealer, and then boom, she can make blood seal.
Yes, but that would be somebody else. Shy herself could not just start doing blood sealing.
Yes, correct.
I mean, not without that intervening seal that we know of. This
Shy would
magic
need to
system
create a
is,
whole new person to do it.
aside from what goes on in Threnody, this is the system we know the least about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Gaetano looks around the room, how much it is, talks about the essence marks and the different one. I, in one of my notes, say that one of them basically turns her into Vin. And then the reason Shy tells him why she burned the painting was like final moment of her being truthful to him so that he would return her actual essence marks.
Very true.
Anything else for 76?
Setting up that essence marks with the
Okay.
with the honesty.
85. I don't think we have anything for 85. Last minute reflection and panic on everything needing to be changed. And she lists off her escape plan. Which I feel like it's kind of foolish to have like a written version of escape plan. Granted, it is in code, but still.
I mean, but she works by writing things out. That's how she works. Because sorry. She is a scholar. Like, that's the type of person that she is.
If you don't write it down, it's not a real plan.
True. She comments that it's going to take her she's going to spend it on one more week. And then we jump to 97, and that is a little bit longer than a week.
It's because she really wants to get it done. She so desperately wants to complete the stamp.
Why is it always crunch time?
We learn we learn the word ku nu kam, which is I think our first ever like slur slash I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. And maybe a slur, but like an in-world term of what's the opposite of endearment?
Derision.
Yeah, like
I don't know if that's the opposite.
A word
of works.
Of derision. Yeah, I think that this is like Brandon's word of, or one of vision. Or
You anus mouth.
Kuluken does kind of
butt face is what I translated it to.
Yeah.
Like Rolo.
Yeah.
You conniving Rolos.
Yeah. Actually, we had that one first. Sorry.
Yeah, but I always saw that as like sort of. True. But we don't have a translation for that.
Yeah, fair.
But Swiggity's right, we did have. But I always saw that as sort of endearing.
Like, oh, you big blockhead. For Charlie
exactly.
Brown.
Yeah, Galadon is kind of like that, right? He'd be the guy who's like, shut the F up. But like, you know, he's like being nice.
Mm-hmm.
He's like the guy,
Mhm.
like, if Galadon's not messing with you, that means he doesn't like you.
Exactly. Anything for 97? Okay, 98, the last one. Soul stamping is kind of dominion-y, yeah? I feel like this doesn't make sense anymore from when I wrote it after the conversations we had.
I don't necessarily feel like it's either devotion or dominion, personally, very much.
Yeah, if it's anything, it's a combination of the two because you have to be devoted to the thing enough to understand it completely before you can dominate what it actually is. So yeah, if anything, it's like a combination, but I think this is just kind of something you can do with, your loose wizardy power.
I'm just gonna go with you guys on that.
There was
one.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, the power has been pooling and congealing for, thanks to Wind and Truth, we have a semi-distinctive timeline of 7,000 years. I don't know, wait, when was this written in comparison to Roshar? Been on the timeline.
We don't know exactly. I don't know if we know exactly when Emperor's Soul specifically takes place in relation to the other timelines.
Timeline. Give me a second.
I know it takes place after Elantris, but I can't remember if it takes place before Mistborn Era 1 or after Mistborn Era 1. We know it's got to take place before Mistborn Era 2 because Shai shows up in Mistborn Era 2. And I think it takes place after Elantris, but
That
I've
seems
got
right.
some reports saying the same time as Elantris and a little bit before the 5 scholars show up on Roshar. Yeah, so it's fairly early in the timeline, but
yeah,
still only a little bit before Mistborn Era 1. So that's still like, 5,000 plus years. So if
yeah,
the power of honor can start to gain a conscience in, what was it, like 2,000 years?
yeah,
Then I definitely think that the power of devotion and dominion could have a conscience at this point.
yeah.
Could have
Well,
merged.
and it's a question of as well whether or not, because they're in the cognitive realm, how that would affect the powers as well. Because Honor's power was in the spiritual realm.
That makes sense.
I had commented, I think at the beginning, that I thought that's the soul stamps, the physical rock that they use was from asteroids. Apparently it ties into this and how they worship, like Shite's ancestors worshipped asteroids that fell.
I know, that was so fascinating, right? It was like the bodies of their old gods or something.
Yeah, I thought that was cool.
It reminded me of Wind and Truth. When Hoyd is talking about how, like, oh, they worship the rocks because they brought the rocks from Ashen, and then it just became tradition eventually. That kind of reminded me of that.
You get the little note about Tio. All the improvements were a distraction from the degradation of the pit.
Oh,
She
I
burned.
know who it is. Sorry.
Oh, jeez.
Unrelated.
We'll come back to that.
We should definitely
off
plug
camera.
that, though.
All the improvements were a distraction. She burned the fake journals that write her notes. Shai helps set up the security checkpoint system. There's a comment about the Grands being long, and do we think the Grands are invested in some way?
No, I think they're just a different race of people.
Okay.
I don't think it's anything all that like mystical or anything. I think it's just that they're just a different race of people.
Nip that in the bud, why don't you? She stamps Ashravan, and it works. A lot more lucid than she thought he would be. He's able to piece together that she's a forger and everything. Which Gaetana later says, "Oh shoot, he wasn't supposed to figure that out." You get the Gjorn, and she decides to make one little thing to her final soul stamp, and to include a kind grandfather that supported her, which I think is very sweet. I like her.
It's very cute.
Shai stamps the Shaizong one, has a concept of timelines. We see Zhu get his butt kicked, and then she beats up all of the skeletals. I think is
Yeah.
skeletals.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Is the term.
Which are really
And then
creepy.
she disappears.
I don't think I mentioned that earlier, but the skeletal creatures are like really creepy.
Gosh, I wish I could see this fight. Granted, in book format, I don't really care for it, but if visually I could see like Shai change into this new person, Zhu just come up and immediately just get knocked down. That would be so gratifying.
Oh yeah, no, this
I
would
would love
be
to see that.
really cool. This like ending scene, especially, would be really cool, like on screen. Like everything on this last day where she like is walking down, like she's like beelining down the hallway, and she like grabs the pot, rips the seal off, stamps the new one on as she's like doing all of this like cool like manipulation, you know? Like, well, no, like even before then, like when she's going towards the emperor's rooms, like she's like she quickly
turns
like
a thing
changes
into a
her
bedpan.
clothes, she changes the pot into a chamber pot, like is like the vase into a chamber pot, like as she's just like strolling down the hallway as like she's doing this. Like
Prison
Like I
breaks,
imagine
I'm
she
telling
might
you.
have like either like yes it is. Like either she let her hair down for the first time all book, or she put it up for the first time. It's
yeah.
like making a big difference between the two.
Did we ever get a good reason why Zhu wanted to kill her so bad?
Because she
'cause
infiltrated the palace under his nose.
Yeah.
That really was it?
She made him. Yeah, she made him look like a fool. So he's like, "I'm gonna kill you."
Oh,
pity
you
the fool.
absolute fool.
And then Shite Sealer tells him to go home. His blood, and that's what spurred the question of whether or not she could do blood sealing as well. And then that's pretty much it. Gaotana goes to meet the new Ashravan. It worked.
Yeah.
Ta-da!
Ooh.
She pulled it off.
She
Okay,
has created
so-
a Frankenstein.
No, Frankenstein's monster.
Frankenstein.
His monster.
No, he's switching to young Frankenstein.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Oh my gosh, thank you.
No, I
Some
I
really
was-
impressive knockers.
I would like to say I was in fact aware of that. I just chose to ignore it.
Frau Brewer.
Let's move on. Okay.
Put the candle back.
What was it that we were talking about before?
Yeah,
Like-
before we made it to the spoiler section, we were like, "That's for the spoiler section."
It was about forgery. But
Thanks, Kay.
this whole book is about forgery.
Huh.
Well, Well, listeners, if you remember, go ahead and leave a comment and remind us what we were talking about, because we're clueless.
We were talking at one point about her making the room bigger.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah, why this
Was it about stuff?
blood stamp didn't mess with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the blood stamp
Yes.
is on the door. And it
So is
probably
blood
works
stamping... Sorry.
It probably works on her interacting with that door, not necessarily on the entire room, which we've seen her interact with in a number of different ways, and it not set off the blood seal.
I thought that she made a comment where, like, if she were to go out the window, it would also cause the blood stamp to take
Oh,
effect.
That was enough chapters ago that I don't remember for certain.
I thought there was something about blood sealer. The thing is, I can't remember... Let me... On one hand, I could see blood sealing acting similarly to soul stamping. It's saying this room, the spiritual of this room, you cannot. But also, because Shai mentions, like, if she had her survivalist essence mark, she could just, like, go out the window. She was a contortionist.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But I think she says that she couldn't do anything, not only because she didn't have her stamps, but also because she, because the blood seal was still on the door. Because he can track her by that blood seal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because he's still got some of her blood.
Mm-hmm.
If she leaves this room for any reason, or if she alters the rune or the door, I will know.
Yeah. So she altered the room.
So I guess...
So was he aware when she was altering the room?
Presumably.
But she didn't alter the rune or the door. Rune, not room.
Oh, rune,
Sorry.
not room.
R-U-N.
Okay. That's...
Yeah.
I misheard. Okay.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Which she didn't ever touch the door.
Yes. And there was a comment in my chat about she made everything beautiful, but she didn't touch the door.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like maybe.
So I'm guessing...
Well, like, she's changing the room, right? But it's still 4 walls and a door. And whatever magic, like, the blood sealer is using isn't saying, like, oh, you need to be from this square footage over. It's, like, saying, like, the inside of this room. So, like, in the blood seal magic's eyes, maybe it's still just, like, oh, that's the room. Now it's a little bit longer, but, like, we're still going to the edge of it.
Mm-hmm.
It does seem to act sort of soul stampy, in which it recognizes what the cognitive/spiritual identity of the object is.
Right.
Anything else for this chapter set? Next week. Sorry.
Nope. I got nothing.
Next week we have the epilogue. That's going to have 3 different POVs. Some of them are going to be very short, but it gives us all something to do. And that'll be it. I don't think we're going to... Are we going to rate it against the other books? Or are we going to have a different rating for novellas?
I don't know. We'll decide
all one of
that.
them?
Yeah, I would say we can decide that next week.
Yeah, we'll just tell people if they should read it or not.
Spoiler alert,
Yeah.
yes, you should.
Yes. Okie dokie then. I'm gonna just about cover it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us in our Ramixter predictions. This has been Cosmere. To see you next time.
Cosmere
Bye.
Connections.
Oh boy!
Bye, everybody. Hello, everybody. Swiggity Swoo here with a post-episode message for you. Some of the guys from Cosmere Connections recently appeared on the Sandbox's channel, and Trevor and us had a battle of Cosmere characters. It was basically a draft. We all picked a team, and then we debated which team was the strongest and who would win. From when I picked
Two
him,
Jezreel blades in one fight. This is going to be great.
Oh, that's true.
If we're pulling across different points of space and time, then surely we can allow, like, same weapon.
and viewers like yourself can comment and help us decide on that. So we'll link it in the description and go check it out. And remember, there's always another connection.